single millionaire. Dad saw a black soldier at bus stop. You're coming with me. Took her home. A single millionaire saw a black female soldier at a bus stop and said, You're coming with me. Then took her home. As the Seattle rain fell relentlessly, Julian Croft, a man who had everything, was ready to ignore the solitary figure. His million-dollar schedule had no room for random acts of kindness. But something about this woman forced him to slam on the brakes. Though soaked, her uniform remained crisp, her medals gleaming like a silent challenge to the storm. She wasn't a victim. She was a warrior left behind. Get in. That's not a request, Sergeant. With those words, Julian Croft didn't just invite a stranger into his luxury car. He had unwittingly found the key to avenging his own family's tragedy. And Sergeant Evelyn Reed, a soldier betrayed by the entire system, didn't just find a night's shelter. She had found the most powerful and dangerous ally her enemies could never have anticipated. Follow along to discover how one unexpected act of kindness ignited a sophisticated war for justice, toppled one of the Pentagon's most corrupt and powerful generals, and proved that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on the battlefield. The cold Seattle raindrops lashed against the windshield of the Audi A8 with a monotonous, almost hypnotic rhythm. Inside the warm cabin, Julian Croft let the automatic wipers do their work, his eyes gazing absently into the city's wet night. He was on his way to an important meeting, one of the countless meetings that filled the schedule of a millionaire, the CEO of the security tech empire Aegis Dynamics. His life was a series of calculated actions, measured decisions, and orchestrated successes. It was perfect, controlled, and terribly empty. That's when he saw her. At a nearly deserted bus stop under the amber glow of a streetlight, a lone figure stood motionless. It wasn't the image of someone waiting in vain, but a statue of defiance. Julian slowed down, not out of curiosity, but from a powerful impulse he hadn't felt in years. The woman stood tall, her back as straight as a soldier on parade, despite her uniform being soaked through. Her medals glimmered faintly against the dark fabric, like stubborn stars clinging to their last light in a storm. She was a soldier. That was unmistakable. But there was something more. Julian watched as a well-dressed, affluent white couple hastily took their young child by the hand and walked around her, the mother not forgetting to cast a wary and disgusted glance at her, as if her presence were a threat. A few seconds later, a large SUV deliberately drove through a nearby puddle, sending a dirty spray of water straight at her. She didn't flinch, not a single flinch, not a single curse. She just stood there, accepting the petty assault with a solemn silence, a silence that echoed louder than any scream. Julian slammed on the brakes. The Audi A8 stopped right beside the bus stop, its engine purring softly in the rain. His schedule, the million-dollar meeting, the rules he had set for his own life, they all vanished. This wasn't pity. Pity was for the weak, and the woman before him, even in her most desperate circumstances, exuded an extraordinary strength. This was recognition. He recognized that unbreakable dignity. It was the same dignity his wife, Captain Eleanor Croft, had carried until her last day, when she faced betrayal from the very system she had sworn to protect. Julian lowered the window. The cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and concrete. Are you planning to stand there until you freeze to death? His voice came out, gruffer than he intended. Not a gentle offer, but almost a command. The woman turned. Her eyes that had seen far too much for anyone to bear, looked straight at him. There was weariness in them, but no defeat. Thank you, sir. But I'm fine. No, you're not, Julian retorted, his hand pressing the button to unlock the doors. "Get in. That's not a request, Sergeant." He had seen the rank on her sleeve. Addressing her by her proper title was an acknowledgement, a message that he didn't see a homeless black woman, but a soldier. Sergeant Evelyn Reed hesitated. 12 years of service, 4 deployments to the most dangerous places in the world, had taught her never to trust the kindness of strangers, especially kindness that came from a man in a luxury car. But there was something in this man's voice, an authority that didn't come from arrogance, but from an understanding of pain. She opened the car door, bringing the cold of the night into the warm, luxurious space. The door closed behind her, shutting them off from the rain, from the judgmental stares, from the entire world. Inside the car, silence descended, heavy with unspoken stories. Julian pressed the accelerator, and the car quietly merged into the city's flow, carrying 2 strangers connected by an invisible thread of betrayal and a fragile glimmer of hope for justice. Evelyn didn't know that she wasn't just stepping into a car, but into the eye of a storm, a war she was never prepared to fight. The Audi A8 glided in silence, with only the sound of the rain and the steady rhythm of the wipers breaking the stillness. The silence inside the car was even heavier than the storm outside. Julian didn't ask, and Evelyn didn't speak. He focused on the road ahead, while she, out of deep-seated instinct, silently scanned the rearview mirrors, assessing every intersection, every car that passed. She was no longer in uniform, but the soldier inside her never rested. Julian noticed. "You never really leave it behind, do you?" he said suddenly, his voice low and understanding. Evelyn flinched slightly, turning to look at him. "Leave what behind, sir?" "The uniform," he replied. "The way you watch everything. As if a threat is always just around the corner." Evelyn didn't answer, but her silence was a confession. The car turned onto a private road, leading to a tall iron gate that opened automatically. Beyond it was a modern mansion of glass and steel, set amidst perfectly manicured lawns. It was beautiful in a cold, precise way, more like a work of art than a home. Evelyn could easily spot the high-tech security cameras hidden at every corner, the motion sensors concealed along the fence line. This wasn't a home, it was a fortress. "Welcome to my fortress," Julian said with a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. He parked the car in a vast garage, where 2 other cars were carefully covered with tarps. As they stepped inside, the luxury and loneliness of the place became even more apparent. Polished marble floors, expensive minimalist furniture, and enormous glass windows overlooked the rain-drenched garden. It felt like a museum dedicated to a memory, a gilded tomb. "Dad!" a clear voice called out from the top of the stairs. A girl of about 12 with curly hair, and her father's large, clear eyes ran down. But in the girl's eyes, there was a precocious maturity, a hint of sadness that a child shouldn't have. The tension on Julian's face immediately melted away. He knelt on one knee, wrapping his arms around her. "Hey, sweetheart. Did I wake you?" "I was reading," the girl said. Then her curious gaze shifted to Evelyn. "Lily, this is Sergeant Reed," Julian introduced, his voice filled with unconcealed respect. "She'll be staying with us for a little while." Evelyn bent down to the girl's level, a rare, genuine smile appearing on her lips. "You can call me Evelyn." "Are you a real soldier?" Lily asked, her eyes lighting up with awe and admiration. That innocent question was like a needle straight to Evelyn's wound. She took a shallow breath to keep her voice from trembling. "I was," she replied. The word "was" hung in the air, carrying a weight that Julian immediately sensed. After Lily had returned to her room with her book, Julian led Evelyn to the kitchen. He made coffee, his movements precise and silent. He handed her a cup, the steam warming her cold hands. "Do you want to talk about it?" Julian asked directly, without any beating around the bush. Evelyn stared into the coffee, at her distorted reflection in the black liquid. She owed this man an explanation. She owed his kindness the truth. And perhaps she owed it to herself to speak this injustice aloud. 12 years, she began, her voice frighteningly steady. "I served for 12 years, 4 deployments. I believed in the system, in honor, in my superiors." She paused, swallowing the bitterness in her throat. "During my last tour in Afghanistan, I discovered that my commanding officer, General Alistair Vance, was siphoning off medical supplies to sell on the black market. Soldiers under my command died because of a lack of basic first aid kits, while he used that money to buy a mansion in Virginia." Julian listened, his eyes never leaving hers for a second. "I gathered evidence. I reported it through the proper chain of command," Evelyn continued, her voice now laced with bitter irony. "And they destroyed me. They said I fabricated evidence, slandered a superior officer. They created a history of insubordination out of thin air. Within 72 hours, my career, my pension, my health benefits, all of it was gone. I was dishonorably discharged." Silence filled the kitchen. The rain outside seemed to roar in place of the pain she was holding back. Julian didn't offer any empty words of comfort. Instead, he quietly stood up and walked to a shelf in the living room. He picked up a respectfully placed photo frame. He turned back, handing the picture to Evelyn. In it was a beautiful woman in an Air Force uniform, her medals shining brightly, and a radiant smile. "This is Eleanor," Julian said, his voice tightening, almost unrecognizable. "Captain Eleanor Croft. My wife." He paused, his eyes looking into a painful distance. "And the system she swore to protect betrayed her, too." The silence in the kitchen was broken by the soft click as Julian placed Eleanor's photo frame back in its place, a gesture so formal it was almost a ritual. He didn't need to explain further. Evelyn understood. She looked at the man before her, no longer a distant millionaire, but an unwilling ally, a soldier in a different war. His pain was the same as hers, only it had been simmering for years, hidden beneath a veneer of wealth and power. "He was a link," Julian said, his voice now ice cold. "Alistair Vance. He was one of the men Eleanor was investigating before she passed away. He was only a major back then, but he was cunning enough to cover his tracks. I never had enough evidence to implicate him in my wife's death, but I knew he was involved." He motioned for Evelyn to follow him. They walked down a long hallway to a door that looked ordinary, but was equipped with a sophisticated biometric lock. Julian placed his thumb on the scanner. The door slid open without a sound, revealing a space that was in stark contrast to the rest of the house. This wasn't an office. It was a command center. The walls were covered with screens displaying data, satellite maps, and scrolling lines of code. A server system hummed softly in a temperature-controlled corner. The air in the room was thick with focus and technology. Evelyn, who had been in military operations centers, immediately recognized the scale and sophistication of the place. "Aegis Dynamics isn't just a security tech company," Julian explained, his eyes scanning the screens. "It is my weapon. For 5 years, I haven't just been building a business. I've been building a private intelligence network. I've installed my systems in nearly half of the Pentagon's facilities, not to make money, but to listen, to gather, to wait." He pointed to a large central screen. "I've been waiting for an opportunity, a weakness, a crack in their fortress wall. And then you appeared, Sergeant Reed. You're not a victim. You are living proof. You are the crack I needed." Just then, Evelyn's cheap phone vibrated on the table. A new message from an unknown number. She opened it, her eyes narrowing as she read the words. "You should have known to stay quiet, Reed. Some truths cost more than a career. They cost a life. A friend." An icy chill ran down Evelyn's spine. They knew. They were watching her. Fear, an emotion she had suppressed for so long, began to creep back in. Julian saw the change on her face. He stepped over, glancing at the phone screen. Instead of concern, a flash of determination lit up his eyes. "They're making a move," he said, his tone frighteningly calm. "That means they're scared. We've poked the hornet's nest." He turned back to the keyboard, his fingers flying across it with dizzying speed. "They thought they could erase you from society, isolate you, make you disappear. They did that to Eleanor. But they don't know that this time, you are not alone." On the main screen, a new window appeared with large red letters. "Activate Aegis Protocol." Instantly, the other screens began to display faces, profiles, and complex connection lines. Evelyn recognized a few faces. Elite former soldiers, top cybersecurity experts, people who had mysteriously retired. This was Julian's army. "We're not going on the defensive, Evelyn," Julian said, turning to her, his eyes blazing. "We're going on the attack. We're going to expose Vance's entire network, from the smallest transactions to the biggest crimes. We're going to use their own system against them." He paused, looking at a specific profile on the screen. A black woman with sharp eyes and a powerful smile. "But to do that," Julian continued, "we need a weapon that even my money and technology can't buy. We need political power. It's time to call an old friend." He picked up the phone, dialing an encrypted number. His voice rang out, clear and decisive. "Senator Hayes, this is Julian Croft. I think I've just found the witness you've been looking for." Less than an hour later, a black sedan with no special license plate pulled up quietly in front of Julian's mansion. The woman who stepped out of the car carried the unmistakable aura of Washington, D.C. power. She wore a perfectly tailored suit. Her hair was cut short and neat, and every step exuded the confidence of someone who had won many battles in the most powerful corridors. This was Senator Isabella Hayes. Julian met her at the door, a firm handshake between two longtime allies. "Isabella, thank you for coming," he said. "Don't thank me, Julian," she replied, her sharp gaze already fixed on Evelyn, who was standing in the living room. "Thank Sergeant Reed here for giving us a reason to act." Senator Hayes walked up to Evelyn. She didn't offer conventional words of comfort. Instead, she looked Evelyn up and down, a seasoned commander's assessment. She wasn't looking at the simple clothes Evelyn was wearing, but at her upright posture, at her unflinching eyes. She saw a soldier. "They always underestimate women like us, don't they, Sergeant?" Senator Hayes said, her voice deep and powerful. "They think our silence is weakness, our patience is acceptance. Today, we're going to show them just how wrong they are." Her handshake was firm. Instantly, Evelyn felt a connection, an understanding that went beyond words. She was standing before someone who not only understood her fight, but had fought it herself. They returned to Julian's command center. Evelyn presented all her evidence concisely and clearly. The documents, photos, and testimonies she had risked her life to collect. They were compelling, but still the story of one individual against a system. After she finished, Senator Hayes nodded. "Your evidence is solid, but it will be twisted by Vance and his pack of lawyers into a personal vendetta. We need more." "And we have it," Julian said, signaling his team. The large screens lit up. What appeared stunned Evelyn. This was no longer about crates of medical supplies. These were troop movement maps, drone flight schedules, information on weapons contracts. Alistair Vance's name appeared repeatedly, not just in black market deals, but in encrypted communications with notorious private military contractors and even foreign intelligence contacts. "He isn't just a thief, Evelyn," Julian said, his voice steely. "He's a traitor. He's been selling national security information for personal gain. Your soldiers weren't the only victims. He put hundreds, maybe thousands of our troops' lives at risk." The scale of the truth nearly took Evelyn's breath away. Her personal battle had just become a matter of national security. Senator Hayes tapped her hand lightly on the table, drawing everyone's attention. "And this is where we strike," she declared. "Next week, Alistair Vance has a hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's going to request a budget increase for equipment modernization. He'll stand there, in front of the C-SPAN cameras, painting himself as a patriot. He's walking into the lion's den, not knowing we're waiting for him." She looked directly at Evelyn. "Here's the plan. I will arrange for you to be at the hearing as a guest. At the opportune moment, I will call you to speak as a special witness. As you begin presenting your evidence, Julian's team will simultaneously release this entire file, from the supply corruption to the treason, to every major news outlet in the country. He'll be hit from all sides," Julian continued. "Your evidence is the fuse. My data is the gunpowder. And Senator, you're the one who lights the match." Evelyn felt her heart beat faster. It was a bold, dangerous plan that could change everything. She was no longer a cast-off soldier seeking vindication. She was about to become the tip of the spear in an attack to topple one of the most powerful and dangerous men in the Pentagon. "He'll never see it coming," Senator Hayes concluded, a sharp smile on her lips. "General Vance is about to learn a very public lesson. Never pick a fight with a resilient sergeant, a vengeful billionaire, and a very angry senator." She held out her hand in the middle of the table. "Shall we start the war?" Julian placed his hand on hers. Evelyn, after a deep breath, placed her hand on top. 3 hands, 3 people from 3 different worlds, united by a common goal. Justice. In his expansive Pentagon office, with a sweeping view of the Capitol building, General Alistair Vance placed his hands behind his back, surveying his empire of power. The flags were displayed with honor. The carefully framed photos with top politicians lined the shelves. Everything in this room was a declaration of power, of a career built on ruthlessness and rules rewritten for his own benefit. The phone on his mahogany desk rang. It was a call from a trusted subordinate. "General, sir," the voice on the other end said. "Everything has been handled. Reed's benefits have been frozen. Her file has been red flagged in the system. No defense contractor will touch her now." Alistair Vance smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. "Good. Make sure she understands that the world is a very cold place without our protection. A necessary lesson for those who don't know their place." He hung up, his mind completely free of the problem named Evelyn Reed. To him, she was just a minor annoyance, an insect that needed to be squashed, and he had done so effectively. In Vance's world, people like Evelyn Reed existed to serve. They should be grateful for the opportunity to serve under great men like him. When they forgot that, they needed to be reminded of the harsh reality. Vance's mind was filled with contempt. He had never considered Evelyn a real threat. A black female soldier, even with a few medals, what could she do? He had seen dozens like her throughout his career, people too naive, too idealistic, who believed in hollow concepts like honor and truth. They didn't understand that in the real game of power, those things were just tools, not principles. Truth was what men like him defined it to be. Vance turned back to the speech he would deliver to the Senate Armed Services Committee next week. This was what mattered. This was his stage, his opportunity to consolidate power, to secure lucrative contracts, and to open new channels of wealth. His speech was filled with flowery language about protecting our brave soldiers, about the necessity of the most advanced technologies to ensure their safety. The irony was completely lost on him. He truly believed he was doing the right thing for himself, and that was all that mattered. He thought of Julian Croft and his company, Aegis Dynamics, a rich but weak billionaire, obsessed with the death of his wife. Vance knew about the connection between Croft and Eleanor. He even felt a flicker of feigned pity for the man. A useful tool, but just a tool. Vance had no idea that tool had been sharpened for years, not to serve, but to pierce him through the heart. In the afternoon, as he was preparing to leave the office, a thought flashed through Vance's mind. A petty thought, a final act to assert his absolute dominance. He wanted Evelyn Reed not just defeated, but spiritually crushed. He wanted her to live in fear, to know that even in her disgrace, she was not beyond his reach. He picked up a burner phone from a drawer and typed a message. "I see you found some powerful friends, Reed. Too bad they don't know the whole truth about you. See you at the hearing." Signed, someone who knows your darkest secret. He didn't actually have any dark secret on her, only the lies he himself had created. But that didn't matter. The purpose of the message was to sow doubt, to sow fear, to make her feel that even her new allies would abandon her. It was a vicious psychological blow, the final flick of a winner's wrist. Alistair Vance sent the message, tossed the phone in the trash, and whistled a cheerful tune as he put on his coat. He looked out the window toward the Capitol building, lighting up at dusk. Tomorrow, the Senate would hear a leader speak. As for Sergeant Evelyn Reed, by the day after tomorrow, no one would even remember her name. He had absolutely no idea that his own arrogance had just sealed his fate. That night, Julian Croft's mansion was submerged in a silence as taut as a bowstring. The storm outside had passed, but the real storm was just beginning. Julian found Evelyn in the library, a vast room with floor-to-ceiling wooden bookshelves. She wasn't reading. She was standing before a large window, looking out at the distant lights of Washington, D.C., her back straight and solitary. She couldn't sleep. Every detail of the plan, every possible scenario, ran through her mind like an endless film. This was no longer just her fight. It had become a fight for Eleanor, for Julian, and for countless other nameless soldiers who had been crushed by the same machine. The weight of it was immense. Julian entered without a word. He placed a small, old wooden box on a nearby table. He opened it gently. Inside, on a faded velvet lining, was a pair of military dog tags. "Eleanor's," Julian said, his voice low. "The last night she called me. She said she was scared, but not of dying. She was scared the truth would die with her. She was clutching these tags as she spoke, as if they were the only thing left that could prove who she was, after they had taken everything else." He pushed the box toward Evelyn. "Tomorrow, you're not just fighting for yourself, Evelyn. You're fighting for Eleanor, too. You're carrying her voice into that room, and you will not be alone." Evelyn looked down at the dog tags. They were cold and heavy in her palm. In that moment, all her anxiety vanished, replaced by a resolve as cold as steel. She was no longer afraid. She was ready. The next morning, the air in the house was thick with focus. There was no unnecessary conversation, only the sound of coffee being poured and the shared silence of two soldiers preparing for a mission. Julian wore a charcoal gray suit that fit like modern armor. Evelyn chose a simple, professional outfit that transformed her from a victim into a powerful advocate. They sat in the Audi, gliding through the Capitol streets. The city's marble monuments rose majestically, symbols of a republic they were trying to protect from within. The U.S. Capitol building gradually came into view in the distance, its dome standing out against the clear blue sky, both magnificent and intimidating. Just then, Evelyn's phone vibrated. A new message from the same anonymous number. "I see you found some powerful friends, Reed. Too bad they don't know the whole truth about you. See you at the hearing." Signed, someone who knows your darkest secret. The blood in Evelyn's veins seemed to freeze. A dark secret? Her mind raced. In her 12 years of service, had she made a mistake? A wrong call in combat? Some moment of weakness that Vance could twist and distort? Doubt, the most dangerous weapon of all, began to creep into her mind. She handed the phone to Julian. He read the message, his expression unchanging. He looked at her, seeing the fleeting confusion in her eyes. "This is what men like him do, Evelyn," he said, his tone firm and calm. "When they don't have the truth, they sow fear. It's the last weapon of a coward." He looked her straight in the eye. "He has nothing. We have everything. He's trying to throw you off your game right before the match. Don't let him. Trust the plan, and trust me." Julian's words were like an anchor in the storm within her. The fear receded, replaced by a cold fury. He dared to use these dirty tricks. He dared to think she would crumble over a baseless threat. The car stopped. The Capitol building loomed before them. Evelyn took a deep breath. The calm before the storm was over. She looked at her reflection in the car window. She no longer saw an abandoned soldier. She saw a warrior. And the battle of her life was about to begin. The Senate Armed Services Committee hearing room was a solemn space where power was expressed in every small detail. Polished mahogany, respectfully hung American and military flags, and an air thick with weighty silence. The impassive red lights of the C-SPAN cameras were pointed at the podium, ready to transmit every word, every gesture, to millions across the country. General Alistair Vance stepped up to the podium, his demeanor confident and composed. His uniform was wrinkle-free, his medals gleaming under the lights. He was the embodiment of military authority, a symbol of strength and patriotism. He cleared his throat, smiled at the senators, completely unaware that he was standing on the edge of an abyss. "Distinguished senators," Vance began, his voice resonant and persuasive. "Our proposal today aims to protect this nation's finest sons and daughters. Our soldiers on the front lines deserve to be equipped with the most advanced technologies, the most modern assets. We cannot and will not let them face the enemy with outdated tools." In the audience, Evelyn Reed took a deep breath. Julian, sitting not far away, gave her a discreet nod. It was time. Vance continued his well-prepared speech, even adding a touch of feigned indignation. "Unfortunately, even within our own ranks, there are sometimes problematic individuals who, out of personal discontent, spread disinformation, attempting to tarnish the honor of dedicated officers." That was the signal. "General Vance," Senator Isabella Hayes's voice rang out, calm but sharp as a razor, cutting off Vance's speech. "Before you continue, I believe the committee has a special witness who has information directly relevant to your operations in Afghanistan." Vance's smile froze for a split second. Annoyance was clear in his eyes. "Senator, I don't understand. According to the schedule." "Schedules can change, General," Hayes interrupted politely but allowing no argument. "The committee would like to call Sergeant Evelyn Reed. Please come forward." The name Evelyn Reed echoed through the room like a thunderclap. All the cameras instantly swiveled toward the audience. Journalists leaned in, whispering. And Alistair Vance, the powerful man who just moments ago was on top of the world, turned as white as a sheet. He stared at the figure slowly rising, as if he had just seen a ghost from the past. Evelyn walked into the aisle. Every step was steady, confident. She was no longer the trembling woman at the bus stop. She wore the truth like a suit of armor. She approached the public microphone, her eyes never leaving the stunned general at the podium. The entire room held its breath. "Good morning, General Vance," Evelyn said, her voice clear and steely, amplified throughout the hearing room. "Are you surprised to see me here?" Vance tried to regain his composure, arrogance returning like a reflex. "Senator Hayes, this woman was dishonorably discharged for fabricating evidence and slandering a superior officer. She has no standing. And those are the very allegations she is here to testify about, General," Senator Hayes retorted. "But first, I want the public to know what Sergeant Reed actually discovered in Afghanistan." Vance tried to protest, but it was too late. Evelyn was holding a small audio recorder in her hand. "General," she said, "do you remember this conversation?" She pressed play. Alistair Vance's own voice filled the room, chillingly clear. "That medical supply shipment is worth $85,000 on the black market. Send it to the old contact. Wire my share to the Cayman account." A collective gasp ran through the hearing room. Vance staggered as if he had just been punched. This is a fake! A fabrication!" he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Camera flashes went off non-stop, capturing the moment a general began to melt under the heat of the truth. The curtain had been pulled back, and this was only the first act. The moment Alistair Vance's voice from the recording faded, the room erupted. Reporters shouted, senators whispered in astonishment, and Vance, his face flushed, slammed his hand on the podium. "Lies! It's all a conspiracy to bring me down!" But his denials were lost in the chaos. In the back of the room, Julian Croft, calm in the eye of the storm, gave a slight nod. That was the signal. Almost instantly, the phones and laptops of every journalist in the room buzzed in unison. A new email had just arrived, with a bolded subject line. "Evidence, the General Alistair Vance investigation." "General, perhaps these images will help you remember," Senator Hayes said, her voice as cold as steel, drawing all attention back to her. The large screens in the hearing room lit up. The first image, a high-resolution satellite photo of the supply depot in Afghanistan. The second image, a close-up shot of Alistair Vance himself, pointing, supervising the loading of medical crates onto unmarked civilian trucks. The third image, a complex diagram of financial transactions, showing $650,000 being moved from shell companies to a Cayman account in his name. Each image was another nail in the coffin of Vance's career. His denials grew weaker, becoming frantic and disjointed. He was cornered, with no way out. And like a wounded animal, he launched his final, most vicious attack. "You don't know the truth about her," Vance yelled, his trembling finger pointing straight at Evelyn. "Ask her about the operation in Kandahar. Ask her about the civilians who died under her command. That's the real reason she was discharged." The room fell silent once more. The accusation was too heavy. All eyes turned to Evelyn, some of them now tinged with suspicion. This was the dark secret Vance had threatened her with. But Evelyn didn't flinch. She looked directly at Vance, and for the first time since entering the room, she smiled. A smile not of joy, but of pity. "A very interesting point, General," Senator Hayes spoke up, breaking the silence. "In fact, the committee has reviewed the original, unedited report from that very operation." The screen changed again. This time, it displayed an official military document. The text was enlarged for all to see. Sergeant Reed acted with extraordinary courage, disregarding her own safety to rescue 16 civilian hostages from a terrorist attack. Her actions directly saved innocent lives. The evidence of her heroism was laid bare, a stark contrast to Vance's slander. And Julian Croft stood up, his voice heard for the first time in the room, commanding everyone's attention. "We also have this." The screen changed again. This time, no images, just a running sound wave and Alistair Vance's voice, cold and ruthless, once more filling the room. "I don't care what she did. Ruin her reputation. Make up whatever you have to. She can't look like a hero while we're taking her down." It was the final blow. There were no more denials, no more resistance. Alistair Vance stood frozen at the podium, as if all strength had been drained from his body. His metal-adorned uniform now looked like a ridiculous Halloween costume. The arrogance, the power, the smugness, all of it vanished, leaving only a naked man, exposed before the world. He staggered, then collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. His empire, built on lies, corruption, and betrayal, had crumbled completely in a matter of minutes, on live television. "This hearing is adjourned," Senator Hayes declared, the sound of her gavel like a final judgment. "General Alistair Vance, as of this moment, you are under formal criminal investigation." 2 military police officers entered the room, walking straight to Vance. As they escorted him away, Vance's empty eyes met Evelyn's steady gaze. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into," he muttered, a final, feeble threat. Evelyn looked him straight in the eye, her voice calm and clear. "General, in 12 years, I learned there are 2 kinds of soldiers: those who protect the innocent and those who protect themselves from the innocent. Today, this entire country learned which kind you are." The door slammed shut behind the fallen general. The battle was over. The moment the hearing room door closed behind Alistair Vance, the solemn silence shattered. The room became a chaotic sea of people. Flashes from reporters' cameras went off like lightning, and a wave of sound crashed down as they yelled questions. "Sergeant Reed, how do you feel?" "Senator, what's the next step?" "Mr. Croft, what was Aegis Dynamics' role in this?" They were surrounded, a small island in a media storm. In the midst of the chaos, Senator Hayes placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder, a gesture both protective and proud. Julian stood right beside them, his presence like a solid fortress wall. They didn't need to say anything to each other. A firm nod from the senator, an understanding look from the billionaire. It was all enough. They had won. On the way back to the mansion, the Audi A8 was once again a silent space, but this silence was completely different. It was no longer heavy with pain and doubt. It was peaceful. Evelyn looked out the window as the monuments of Washington, D.C. glided by. She replayed the moment Vance collapsed in her mind. She had waited for this moment, dreamed of it during long, sleepless nights. She had imagined she would feel exultant, joyful, the sweet pleasure of revenge. But no, that feeling never came. Instead, another feeling, deeper and more profound, spread through her chest. It wasn't the hot fire of revenge, but the gentle warmth of justice. Revenge would leave a void after it cooled, but justice fills it. It mends what was broken. It gave her back a piece of her identity that had been stolen. It silenced the lie that had screamed in her head for months, replacing it with a quiet, solid truth. For the first time in a long time, she felt whole. When they arrived at the mansion, the late afternoon sun was bathing the space in a golden light. The heavy iron gate opened, but this time Evelyn didn't feel like she was entering a cold fortress. It felt like returning to a safe harbor after a typhoon. The house was the same, but its meaning had changed. It was no longer a tomb for Julian's ghosts, but the birthplace of an alliance, the place where a victory was planned. It had become a home. That evening, Senator Hayes stayed for dinner. The 4 of them, Julian, Evelyn, Lily, and the senator, sat around the large dining table. The atmosphere was light. Lily chattered about her day at school, her eyes sparkling with joy at seeing her father finally smile, a real smile that reached his eyes. "So, you won?" Lily suddenly turned to ask Evelyn, her innocent question holding a simple truth. Evelyn looked at the girl, then at Julian and Senator Hayes. She smiled. "Yes, Lily. We won." In that moment, Evelyn felt something she thought she had lost forever, a sense of belonging. Her military family had turned its back on her. But now, at this table, a new, unexpected family had been formed. They were survivors, warriors from different fronts, connected by pain, healed by justice, and now, sharing peace together. Julian poured Evelyn a glass of water, his eyes shining with a warmth she had never seen before. The obsession with Eleanor seemed to have softened, replaced by a new purpose. He hadn't just avenged his wife, he had honored her memory by finishing the fight she had started. The great battle was over. The roar of the media and the political arena would eventually quiet down. But what remained in this room was the true victory. Peace, healing, and the beginning of a new journey, together. 8 months later. From her office window in the Pentagon, Evelyn Reed could see the Washington Monument rising proudly. She was no longer Sergeant Reed. On the lapels of her perfectly tailored uniform was the rank of Major. After the sensational hearing, she was not only honorably reinstated, but also promoted swiftly, a historic reparation for what she had endured. And this office, it belonged to the new unit she herself headed, the Military Integrity Division. Ironically, Alistair Vance, in his effort to destroy her, had inadvertently created her dream job. "Major Reed," a familiar voice called out. Julian Croft walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. His presence here had now become normal, a part of her new life. "They just sentenced Vance," Julian said, handing her a cup. 25 years in prison for treason and corruption. All assets seized to compensate the victims' families. His wife filed for divorce. Even his children have changed their last name. Evelyn nodded, quietly taking in the information. There was no joy, just a heavy sense of finality. "He tried to call me from prison last week, said he wanted to apologize." "Did you answer?" Julian asked. "No," Evelyn replied. "Some people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. I forgive Vance for my own peace of mind, but that doesn't mean he deserves a single second of my time anymore." Just then, her phone rang. On the other end was Senator Hayes, her voice full of excitement. "Evelyn, fantastic news. The Eleanor Reed Act for whistleblower protection in the military just passed the Senate. From now on, brave soldiers like you and Eleanor will have automatic legal protection. Your legacies will live on." Evelyn hung up, a warm feeling spreading through her. She looked at the pile of mail on her desk, dozens of letters each week from soldiers all over the world, reporting corruption cases they previously dared not speak of. Her unit had already opened over 20 similar investigations. Real change was happening. That evening, at the dining table in the Seattle mansion, which had now become a true home, Lily, now a confident 13-year-old, asked a question that encapsulated the entire journey. "Aunt Evelyn, do you ever regret telling the truth?" Evelyn looked around the table. Julian was smiling, the smile of a man who had found peace. Lily was growing up with an unshakable sense of justice. And she had found a family built not in spite of adversity, but because of it. She looked at Lily and answered, her voice filled with a wisdom bought with scars. "The truth is a luxury, Lily, but it is always worth the price. General Vance tried to teach me that some secrets cost a career, but I taught him that some silences cost a soul." Now, Alistair Vance sat in a 6-by-9-foot cell, eating food from a metal tray and counting the days of his 25-year sentence. and Major Evelyn Reed headed a unit at the Pentagon, lived in a large house with her chosen family, and woke up every day to protect honest soldiers. She had discovered a truth. The best revenge isn't stooping to your enemy's level. It's rising so high that from your vantage point, they become small and irrelevant. If you have ever faced an injustice that seemed insurmountable, remember that the truth always has a strange way of finding the light. Subscribe to the channel to follow more stories that prove courage will always triumph over corruption.